What's up, comic book fans? Garrick here at Key Issues, and today we're launching a new series called How Bad Was It?, where we take a look at movies, television shows, comics, video games, and more to decide just how bad they really were. Now, I'm not going to just make videos week in, week out, bashing terrible things. The point is to take a real good look at something that most would consider bad and determine whether it was actually bad or not. So we've come up with a pretty simple scale to help out with that, and in the end, something will end up either being really bad, pretty bad, not bad, or good. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the very first video of the series. How bad was Zack Snyder's Watchmen? When Watchmen came out a little under 8 years ago, I was in high school and I had finally reached the age where I could go see rated R movies without parental guidance. So some friends and I decided Watchmen looked pretty cool and that we should go see it. Now, you have to understand, I wasn't a huge comic book nerd back then like I am today. Sure, I liked Batman, and of course I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, but going into Watchmen, I had no idea that it was actually based off a comic book series, and the movie didn't leave that much of an impression on me. I honestly thought it was just okay and went on with the rest of my life. About a year later is where I really started to dig deep into comic books. I was reading every single trade that I could get my hands on, and I finally stumbled across Watchmen. After I read the trade, I remembered the movie much differently. I remembered it being boring and not much like the series at all, but thought maybe it warranted a rewatch now that I had read the book. And after the second viewing, I was blown away. And after talking with some fellow comic book readers, I found out I was in the minority, and Watchmen was held in very low regard amongst comic book fans and casual moviegoers as well. So fast forward to present day, I want to find out, is Watchmen actually as bad as the critics and fans claim that it is? Hot off the heels of 300, it seemed like director Zack Snyder could do no wrong, and when he was attached to direct a film adaptation of arguably the most important comic book series of all time, the people were understandably excited, and ultimately, Zack delivered a visually stunning film. Starting at the very beginning of the movie, he sets the tone with a beautiful fight sequence between the comedian and Ozymandias. The music choice and the composition of the scene paint a haunting and powerful picture which carries throughout the film. But what really amazes me from the beginning are the opening credits. I'd argue that Watchmen's opening credits are possibly the best ever. So the opening credits here serve a couple purposes. Usually in a film, the opening credits just flash in the bottom left right screen of the director, executive producer, etc. while the film is going on, or we just get 2 minutes of nothing while they flash all these names in front of us that we really don't care about. But these credits again do a lot here. They shorten some of the lengthy backstory of the Minutemen with flashes of their most iconic and desperate moments. Zack chooses his music very wisely yet again, going with Bob Dylan's "The Times They Are A-Changin'," which helps illustrate the rise and fall of the Minutemen perfectly, as well as our introduction to the Watchmen. So the bar is set very high from the get-go, and unfortunately that bar is not reached again for the rest of the film. I'll get into some of that a little later, but let's continue with what is great about Watchmen. I can't go any further without mentioning Jeffrey Dean Morgan's comedian. And although he dies in the first scene of the film, he appears throughout the movie in flashbacks. He really carries the film with his performance, and every second he's on screen you just can't look away. Even when he's doing perverse and evil things, you continue to linger on as he owns the character. Another great performance is Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. Much like the comedian, he's a totally brutal character, but has an air of mystery surrounding him that pulls you in and keeps you interested. Haley does a masterful job translating the character from the pages of the source material to the screen. He goes a little over the top a few times with his voice, which is very reminiscent of Christian Bale's Batman voice, but for some reason, it sounds so much better coming from Rorschach.
I shall go to them. I shall go tell the indestructible man that someone plans to murder him.
The rest of the cast falls short of these two, especially Malin Ackerman, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, as Laurie Jupiter. She's very wooden throughout the movie. Most of the scenes she's in feel overly long and pretty boring. If I can pick some particularly awful scenes she's a part of, I'd have to go with the awkward sex scenes that happen a couple times in the movie. These could have been a lot better, mostly by shortening them or even just cutting them entirely. The sex scenes with Laurie Jupiter play a much more important role and are done far better and more tastefully in the source material. Here they feel forced, and again, they're very, very awkward. She doesn't have much, if any, chemistry with Patrick Wilson, who plays Night Owl. The other actors are serviceable, but again, they never reach the bar set by Morgan and Haley. Now, let's get into two of the biggest complaints I see from both critics and fans of the original. The first complaint is that the movie is too close to the source material. This complaint makes no sense to me. Watchmen isn't like the Avengers or the Justice League, where you can craft your own story based off of existing stories or just create an entirely new, never-before-seen story. The Watchmen have one story. That's it. That's the point. There's literally nothing else to go off of. I personally love that Zack Snyder kept so close to the comics, going as far as to use the panels from the comics as the storyboard for the film. He only cut what he felt was absolutely necessary, and I think he made the correct choices when deciding what to keep and what to toss. Which brings me to the second biggest complaint that I've seen. When the movie did stray from the comic and made a substantial change, people were upset about that. I mean, make up your mind. Was he too close to the source material, or was he too far from the source material? Of course, I'm talking about the ending. Snyder made the choice to cut the giant squid, and within the universe and aesthetic that he built for the film, it makes perfect sense to cut an alien monster from the movie when nothing previously would have hinted at something like that at all, something so grand and fantastic. He tried to bring this already down-to-earth story to a more realistic place, and I think it worked. So how bad is Watchmen? I mean, the movie isn't perfect, it's long, the structure isn't always easy to follow, there's some bad makeup choices like Nixon and some oddball choices like having a giant blue dong on the screen, and some of the performances don't stand up, but there's a lot going for it. It's beautiful, epic, and grand in scale. Like I said, Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Jackie Earle Haley are fantastic. It's got some of the coolest visuals you'll ever see, plus I couldn't go without mentioning that prison scene. Overall, Watchmen is not bad. It doesn't deserve the hate that it gets. It's a bold take on one of comics' greatest treasures, and it's very, very rewatchable. If you haven't seen it in a while, I'd give it another chance, and if you've never seen it and never read the original, I highly recommend doing both. Thanks for watching our first installment of How Bad Was It? Do you agree with me? Is Watchmen good or bad in your book? Let me know down in the comments. Also, what should we cover in the next How Bad Was It? 2003's Daredevil, Avengers vs. X-Men, Blade, The Dark Knight Rises, The New 52. The options are endless. Let me know what you want to see next. Thanks again for watching. Remember the motto, it's comics over everything, and I'll see you guys next time.